I remember doing the sermon on comparing spiritual with spiritual, and there was let me see if I can share that. Is that it? Yeah. And so I went to see what all the different translations had to say about 1 Corinthians 2:13, which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but which the Holy Ghost teacheth, comparing spiritual things with spiritual.
Mhm.
And my jaw hit the floor when I saw the way other Bibles translated comparing spiritual things with spiritual. The Holman Bible, explaining spiritual things to spiritual people. English Standard, interpreting spiritual truths to those who are spiritual. The Message Bible, which is unbelievably awful, we're passing it on to you in the same firsthand personal way. New American Standard said, combining spiritual thoughts with spiritual words. And I just totally went off on that in the sermon. How combining spiritual thoughts with spiritual words. What are spiritual words exactly? You know, how does that work? Is there a thesaurus full of spiritual words that we can use in order to create spiritual thoughts? Is a thought no longer spiritual if you aren't using God-determined spiritual words? The NIV said explaining spiritual realities with spirit-taught words. All this stuff. But then you get down to Tyndale, and he called it, he was different. He said, making spiritual comparisons of spiritual things, which is different. And I would argue that is total verbal equivalence. You're saying the same thing in a different way. And I love the way Tyndale said it. I'm not saying that translation needs to be changed, but I love what Tyndale did. You know, it's the same thought as what we have in the King James Version.
Yeah.
But it's just different. It's just expressed differently. The meaning is still the same. You're comparing spiritual things with spiritual. You're making spiritual comparisons of spiritual things, and that means the same thing.
All right.
And that would be a spiritual comparison because you're comparing spiritual things.
But with the mechanism of words.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You don't even need to go out of
exactly.
the verse. Which things we speak.
Right.
Can you speak? You can make gibberish, but that's not speaking. That's just babbling. There's a reason there's a word for that. So when you speak, what do you speak? You speak words. Well, do you just speak random words, or are they organized? That's the reason we have words. We have sentences. We have paragraphs. We have chapters. We have books. It implies language and the expression of language. So when you read it, to me, it makes perfect sense. Which things we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but which the Holy Ghost teacheth, comparing spiritual things with spiritual things that are expressed in words. So the spiritual things aren't words themselves.
That's right.
But rather
the thought itself,
the thoughts, the content, as well as the structure.
Okay, so Hal, I just asked AI if it could write me a sentence using spiritual words. And the AI told me, amidst the quietude of the sacred temple, her spirit resonated with the divine harmony, radiating enlightenment and serene tranquility.
Well, that settles that matter.
Exactly. Totally settles that matter and every point we just made.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.